Well, hey there, this is Jim Meskimen as President George W. Bush, and you're listening to Headsmack podcast, Conversation with Misfits. Don't know what I'm doing here.
Hey, this is Jim Meskimen as Robin Williams saying you're listening to Headsmack podcast. Oh, careful, you should wear a helmet. And this is Conversations with Misfits, so listen up.
This is Donald Trump. Well, it's not really. It's Jim Meskimen anyway. This is Conversation with Misfits. It's a difficult word. It's a hard word to say, Misfits. It doesn't really fit in my mouth. But anyway, it's Headsmack podcast, which is a lot simpler to say.
Joe Biden here, President. Joe Biden. And, you know, that dog-faced pony soldier, Jim Meskimen, he's doing a podcast, the Headsmack podcast. So you should listen up, especially if you're a misfit. Yeah.
You are listening to Conversations with Misfits, Mavericks, and Trailblazers.
Welcome to the Headsmack podcast. My name is Paul Povolni, and I'm excited to have you along for our Conversations with Misfits. And a wonderful misfit that we have today with us is Jim Meskimen. He is an actor, impressionist, who has been in 5 feature films with director Ron Howard. He's been on TV's Friends, The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, S.W.A.T, Hunters, Gaslit, Parks and Recreation, and NCIS, and tons more. His impressions are featured on The View, Fox and Friends, The Tonight Show, America's Got Talent, just a few of them. And right now he's on Apple TV for the Big Door Prize, as well as American Auto on NBC. Jim Meskimen, welcome.
Thank you, Paul. Nice to be here.
And so for the folks that are out there that are pretty impressed with that, that's only just a touch of what Jim has actually been a part of. He has been on hundreds of not only TV shows, but he's been on movies. He does voiceover work for video games. And so if you're part of any kind of popular culture at all in the last, a couple of decades, you've probably heard or seen Jim Meskimen, and his body of work is wonderful. And the work that he does with both impressions as well as acting is just amazing. Jim, one of the things that, we don't talk about it as much anymore, but one of the things that we like to do, or we used to like to do, is do the 7 degrees of bacon. And so how many degrees of bacon are you?
You're talking about the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, right?
Yeah, 6 degrees. 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon.
I guess with inflation, it's 7 degrees now. But
yes, it's 2024.
Well, I'm 1 degree. I've worked with Kevin Bacon. I was in Frost Nixon with Kevin Bacon. I was in Apollo 13 with Kevin Bacon. So I'm in the skillet with the bacon, popping away,
sizzling right there along with them, with the best of them. That's amazing. And Yeah, and so with a lot of people, they probably can play 6 degrees of bacon using you as the connector, because because you've worked with so many different actors, both on television and in movies and Academy Award winning stuff. So I'm actually 3 degrees of Meskimen. I think there needs to be a 6 degrees of Meskimen, because I'm about 3 degrees of Meskimen. So I have a friend. His name's Kevin Thibodeau, and he was on I Love Lucy. He was also on the Andy Griffith Show with Ron Howard, who you've done 5 feature movies with.
Right.
But the interesting thing is Ron Howard was on Happy Days, and Happy Days had your mom. And so you are actually the son of Mrs. C. And so there I am, 3 degrees of Meskimen for Paul Povolni.
Boom, boom. Yeah. Kevin Thibodeau, that sounds like a very familiar name. So he must be
Keith Thibodeau. Yeah, he was Richard Keith. Yeah.
Okay, Keith. So he must be in his 70s or 80s, I'm assuming.
Yeah, he played Little Ricky.
Oh, he was Little Ricky.
He played Little Ricky.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, Mom was... obviously unhappy. He's played Mrs. C, and is beloved all over the world, and was my, de facto mentor for ages and ages. And she's still around, not working anymore, but enjoying her retirement. She's about 95, and she's just a treasure. We're always, just going and enjoying her company. She's lives not too far away from me, so I see her all the time. And yeah, she introduced me to Ron Howard at an early age, and very, very pointedly. I remember even before Happy Days, my mom, when we watched television, she would say, "That's Ron Howard," you know, and I never thought about it at the time, but I was just kind of, oh, okay. And then I realized, well, that she was doing that on purpose, as like, here's a role model, here's something to aspire to. And although our careers couldn't be more different, less similar, more different, we have intersected and become friends. And obviously he's hired me a few times, and we stay in touch. And that was I think it's an important contribution that a parent makes, is to point out people, hey, you know, not for nothing, you should notice this person, because they have that may be a kind of a direction for you to go in.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, any Gen Xer out there absolutely loved the work that your mom did on Happy Days.
Yeah.
She was feisty, a great actress, and it's so good to see her on that. And her pointing out Ron Howard and saying, hey, follow him, pay attention to what he's doing, I think is just a reflection of her character. And in talking to Keith Thibodeau, you know, he had talked about off screen, on screen, how different people were. And he had talked about Lucy and Desi adopted him as one of their own. You know, even though he played their kid, little Ricky, he actually became a part of their family and spent time with their kids. And so, you know, with your mom being as big as she was, did you fully understand like the scope and the size of what Happy Days was at the time?
No, no, it was impossible to grasp. Even today, I'm still kind of learning, because you know, I encounter people that come from what I consider far-flung places, you know, like Italy, who are like, "Oh, your mom," you know, and like, how is this possible?
Right.
So, you know, and at the time, being in the center of it all and not really having a good grip on most of life, and certainly, you know, like today, we have all kinds of metrics and ways of kind of quantifying the amount of reach that a piece of content, for example, has. Back then, if you heard, you know, wow, the Nielsen ratings, this show is number one in the Nielsen's, like, what does that mean? You know, and Happy Days was number one quite often. It was like, well, that means like 15 million homes. And you're like, oh, 15 million homes. You don't really have a good grasp of what that means.
Right.
You know, over the decades, then you start realizing, oh, well, you know, over the years, my mom and that show had an effect, a positive effect on, you know, just scads of people, just like in a wave of, you know, over time, where people commonly come up to my mom and say, you raised me.
Wow.
And, you know, that sort of phrase over and over again, it's like, wow, how do you sense that on a Tuesday night? Like, well, I think, you know, the show went pretty well tonight. I think probably 3 or 4 million young men think that I raised them. Like, I don't think you'd get that.
Right. Well, yeah, and for Gen Xers, I mean, it was the show. I mean, it was such a big show for them to watch, and just your mom, just the way she presented herself. You know, she wasn't your normal mom. You know, she had spice to her. She had you know, her own thoughts and feelings and passions and emotions and all of that stuff that made her a wonderful character. And so I think that's why everybody just loved her. She was just, you know, you can't fake that. I don't think you can fake likability. I think there's just some people you just sense something about them, and they're just likable, you know.
I think you're right. I think you're right about that. Yeah. And talking about, you know, not knowing the effect of what you're creating sometimes. I was in the episode of Happy Days. I did one episode of Happy Days, and obviously I had a lot of nepotism at work there, but because I was not a professional actor at that time, and I had not committed to being an actor at that time, but I'd done some plays, and so I wasn't, you know, like a complete newbie. But my mom got me into the episode, and it turned out to be one of the more famous episodes over the years. The Jump the Shark episode.
Oh, wow.
Is very stand out, you're right.
Yeah.
And I was a kid on the beach. I'm the kid who runs by with another kid, and we announce the fact that there is a shark out in the water, and it's a funny line because it's like, yeah, they caught a shark out there. Marineland is going to come and pick it up. They got it penned up out there until Marineland can come and pick it up. And, you know, at the time, it's like, oh, yeah, that's all the exposition we need. We just need that there's a shark out there. And there's, why is it penned up? Well, it's going to be picked up.
Yeah,
you know,
and
like,
Fonzie's
really
going to jump
up
it.
A lot of scrutiny, this line, but it's enough. And that show, Jump the Shark, Fonzie jumps the shark, and it's like, that turned out to be one of the more memorable, you know, catchphrases.
Wow.
And I just happen to be connected to that. Not many people know that. And,
that's amazing.
I was 17, you know, it's on YouTube. It's kind of fun to watch. I was in great shape.
Yes. Good memories captured right there on celluloid.
Yeah. And I still, every now and then I'll get a check from Paramount, you know, for $1.14 or something.
Well, yeah, even in the reruns, it's just an amazing show to watch. And so was that your first speaking role on the small screen? It was.
It was my first speaking role. I worked a couple of days, and then I went to college. I wasn't fully in my mind committed to being an actor. I also trained and had a lot of early intention to be a cartoonist, illustrator, visual artist.
Okay.
And so I taught myself to be a cartoonist. I read Mad Magazine, you know, cover to cover.
Right.
And there were people that I admired that I tried to emulate. And I worked professionally. My first real professional job was as a cartoonist illustrator. I did a lot of freelance work in New York City. At the same time, I was studying improv and trying to break into commercials and plays and TV shows and stuff. So I was ambivalent and on the fence about it for a long time. And then I made a commitment, moved to New York, and while I was pursuing my acting career, I worked as an artist. But at that time, at Happy Days, when I got that Happy Days job, I was kind of like kind of an idiot 17-year-old, and with artistic, you know, vague artistic ambitions. And I just went back to college after that, and I didn't work professionally then as an actor for many years.
Yeah. So, you know, being in that part, were you know, with your mom, of course, being on the huge show, did she keep you kind of away from acting? Were you on set quite a bit and you got to see it?
I used to go when I could drive, which was about midway through the show, the run of the 11 seasons of Happy Days. Which sounds like a play, doesn't it?
7 seasons of Happy Days.
I used to drive down to Paramount myself on a Friday and watch the show tape, and that was very exciting and a real treat, which I totally took for granted. And I'd go backstage, you know, when I could and hang out. And I knew all the guys, and they knew me. I knew the crew, and I knew the director, and you know, all the folks. And it was kind of like, you know, I felt sort of special and kind of cool, and it was a very popular show, so it was like super fun.
And that gave you street cred, of course.
Yeah, I guess. And but my mom didn't dissuade or push me either way. I mean, again, you have to realize that she was a single mom raising 2 kids with what came to be a very busy life on her own. So I think she had ambitions for us, both my sister and I. My sister, who became a writer and a showrunner on her own of television comedies, and worked on Friends and won an Emmy. And, you know, she's quite a success story and a very funny, wonderful person. Yeah. But she had ambitions for us to be productive and to work and to do whatever we wanted to do. I mean, she was very happy that I was an artist, and she supported my visual arts. So she's just a great mom to have from that point of view of like, what do you want to do? Well, why don't you get busy and do that? Because I think you could be a success, but why don't you do that?
Yeah. And so you pursued the art part of your abilities. What drew you back into wanting to be on stage or to perform?
Well, I had an epiphany at a certain point. I was studying art in Spain, and I was living in Madrid, which sounds very romantic. And this is in the early 80s. And I ran into Harvey Keitel, the actor, on the street, of all things. And of all people. And we spoke, and I realized that I was electrified by that experience. And although I had met many celebrities before and many artists and painters that I respected, that had a particular impact on me. And I was, in a very clear headspace at that time. I had stopped doing drugs. I had kind of really, sort of cleared out the space. And it was lucid enough for me to realize, I'm really attracted to this world of entertainment, not just as an audience member and appreciator, but also as a creative person. And I think that's what I should do. It's more social than what I've been doing. Because painting, and particularly at that point, I was doing like realist oil painting, which took months and months and was very isolated.
Right.
And I realized, well, this is more social. It's actually a group activity. Doing plays, doing TV, even doing commercials is bunches and bunches of people, which I need to be around, I think, for my own sanity. So that was when I made the commitment, and I lickety split pretty soon after that, moved from Madrid to New York, and started my life that way.
How, was your mom overjoyed with that decision, or was she like, "Hey, I'm glad you finally found it. I knew it all along," or what was that conversation
I don't think she was overjoyed. I think she was joyed. Not not underjoyed. She was joyed. Yeah, I mean, I think she was glad that I was back in the States, and like a lot of parents, I think my mom was just kind of like, "Have you found something that you love, and you're going to pursue that? Awesome, go." And I'll help you. And she did continue to help me, and has always helped me. She's interesting because mom is, you think some people say, "Oh, you were raised by Mrs. C," and I wasn't raised by Mrs. C. Nobody was raised by Mrs. C. Actually,
right.
Mrs. C is a character, and my mom was a different entity entirely. There were overlapping things. Her feistiness and her sweetness were similar, but her ambitiousness and mischievousness were something else. And her support of me and my sister as individuals and as creative people was something that I find is quite rare. And when I talk to other people and their relationships with their parents, I realize, I really lucked out in a way that was different from, like, if I'd had Mrs. C as a mom. That would have been lucky too, I guess, but in a different way, and maybe not as helpful in a way. My mom was never home to cook dinner, never. Or if she did a kind of a not great job of it. She's not a great cook. She's okay, but often we joke about it because we remember back in the days before we had any money, because she was a working actress like I am, kind of, and struggling, and again, 2 kids, 1 salary. So she would open up a can of like Del Monte string beans, put it on the table, and we'd fish them out and eat those as a kind of an appetizer. Midwestern. She's a Midwestern girl. She grew up in Minnesota. So canned food, man.
And so, so she was pretty excited about your move back, of course, because that would mean you're closer. And so you started doing the improv. Were your goals to be a stage actor, or was that just an outlet for that creative desire to be in front of people and perform?
It was both. I think it was a path. It was something that I felt very much, I'd been indulged a lot in the world of ideas and coming up with things and being spontaneous and doing voices, doing characters. And this is before I really concentrated on being an impressionist per se, but that was always a skill that I kind of was working on in the background. But improv, I felt attracted to stand-up comedy in a way, but not the lifestyle of it. I was more interested. I was familiar because of my mom, I guess, with theater, the backstage, the rehearsals, all those things that are fun, the opening nights, the cast party, all these things that are kind of fun about theater that attract young people.
The energy, the immediate response from people, all of that. Yeah.
All that makes it, just so delicious. And stand-up was like something I didn't quite understand, and I didn't like being up at night that late doing that, and I didn't like the alcoholic area, the whole, that environment, and the
Right.
heckling, and the fact that maybe you're doing something wonderful and the waiter comes by and says, can you pay this now? Yeah. All these things that are not part of the theater.
Yeah, you're messing with my momentum. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you do that later? The credit card machine, those old credit card machines.
Oh yeah, the old school. Yeah. No subtlety about it.
Yeah. So, so I found, improv was actually a really, really good thing for me, and it helped me in so many ways, just creatively, to trust in my own impulses creatively, because you
Right.
have to kind of, in improv, I'm not sure what your experience is with it. Have you had improv?
A little bit of it, yeah, but not a whole lot at all.
So yeah, well, you probably could recognize though that the factor that in improv you don't have a lot of time to go, is that a good idea? Is that a good idea? Should I do that? It's just like bang, first idea, go. And
Right.
after you've done that over and over again 1,000 times, you have a lot of confidence that, you know what, I'm just going to get an idea and run with it, and it will be fine.
Right.
Sometimes it will be freaking genius. And that's okay,
Yeah.
and I can live with that. So that orientation and preparation helped me out so much just in daily life, and it
Right.
helped me out in the world of commercials, because I happened to go on an interview, an audition, an interview for a grocery chain that was looking to hire somebody in Texas to, I was in New York at the time, but they were hiring in New York for a Texas chain, to interview people in a store, improvise with them, have some fun, and make it sound like it was a fun, friendly store.
Mhm.
And that I was successful in that audition, and that went on to a whole sub career of being a spokesman for stores and improvising with people. And I did it
Nice.
for multiple stores, multiple chains, over maybe a 20-year period, and it was a massive, massive help to us.
Well, and it's amazing
financially.
how those experiences, the improv gave you the skills for the next level, And so was doing the TV commercials kind of your first step back in front of the screen after the Jump the Shark episode? Was that how you?
Yeah, it was around that time. I mean, I'd done other things just as an actor, done other commercials and things, but that was like a solid gig that lasted for, like I said, for decades. I worked for various companies, and so I spent tons of time in front of a camera and experimenting and creating and improvising, and that made me feel very comfortable with a microphone, with cameras, with
Right.
producers and other creative people. So that it was like a on-the-job training that just went on and on and on. And so when I then got opportunities to be in movies and television, that was not an obstacle. I felt very comfortable being in front of a lens, which is, that's a phase that every actor has to go through. They're like, kind of like, there's something about being in front of a camera and knowing that the clock is ticking and that the money is being spent.
Right.
It's like, you have to kind of make your peace with that. And I'd already kind of like burned through that.
Well, and it's an interesting, different kind of pressure too, because when you're on stage, there's a certain adrenaline, certain rush, certain like the show must go on type feeling. Whereas with television, there's another kind of pressure. You think you can stop and start as many times as you want and whatever, but it's like, okay, we got to keep moving, folks. We've got, we're burning sunlight, we've got to keep going and moving. So it's a different kind of pressure.
And there's other people. Like I worked on The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, where I played an impressionist from the 60s, and I got that job by creating my own little monologue with, people like John Wayne and Burt Lancaster, people that they would have imitated in the 60s. And forget the other ones.
James Mason, of course. James Mason was still a big movie star in the 60s.
And so I created this thing. I got the part, and then I go out there and they write a routine for me. But I didn't have a lot of time to work on it because they gave it to me, like, I want to say the day before.
Oh, wow.
And it was supposed to be a routine that I knew very well. And I was like, oh, my God, I'm having trouble with this. And then Amy Palladino is a writer-producer who created that show, who really expects you on those productions to do every word that she wrote and not,
Wow.
even abbreviate anything or no contractions. I mean, everything is like letter perfect. And I was like, oh my God. So I was sweating it a little bit,
I could imagine,
to say
yeah.
the least. And so on the day, I'm like, you're talking about feeling the money clicking and then everybody's time. And it's like, obviously it was a big production. It was
Right.
in a nightclub, an actual club in New York City, filled with extras and smoke. But all these extras are wearing period costumes, and there's cameras and big stars. And it's like, oh my God, and it's all about me not, being able to remember every word
Wow.
and
Wow.
delivering it brilliantly, and as if
Yeah.
I've done it 1,000 times before. And that was it was not a relaxing experience.
Yeah, it's the pressure of both worlds. You're doing stand up, and you're in
That's
front of
right.
a camera, and you're in front of an audience. I mean, it's almost a combination of those two things,
Yeah.
and you've got to nail it and be perfect about it.
Yeah,
So
a
I could
little bit of
imagine it.
a little bit the actor's nightmare for sure.
And so you mentioned you're an illustrator. You like drawing and things like that, and of
Mhm.
course the impressions and stuff. And so one of the things that I've seen you do in your videos, and I've watched quite a few of your videos.
Oh, thank you.
Brilliant stuff, hilarious stuff. And so I wanted to see if you wanted to do a couple of illustrations. I have a couple, and do you have any for me? I'd love to wing it
Oh,
and see if I could come up with something on the fly. If not, that's totally fine.
I don't. I apologize. Shoot. I would have loved to do that. We'll do it another time. I'll be happy to do it. I don't have anything for you.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. Let me pull these up, and so just so people can enjoy the brilliance of what you do. And so I've got a couple that I drew here on my iPad. I gave them names.
Nice.
And so
Okay.
here is the first guy. And let me see if I can get this in front of the camera. If you
Okay,
could
I see him.
Okay.
There's Charlie. Yeah, it's Charlie there. You got hold it a little closer, will you? A little bit closer to the screen. There you go. That helps to. Oh yeah, Charlie's got he's missing some front teeth there, but he's got a real stylish slouch hat on there. I tell you, he looks a lot like a lot of fellas you used to see around the old days, for sure. He looks a little startled, like, "Oh, I didn't expect you to show up." Wow. I'm wearing my favorite brown jacket today.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Okay, the next guy is Mr. Slick William. Here's Slick William. And let me see if that's in front of.
Hello.
The colors are a little off.
Yes, my name is Slick William. I don't know whether this is a magnifying glass or a mirror, but I rather think it's a mirror, a hand mirror, where I'm adjusting my very, very convincing hairpiece. And I know you're scrutinizing me, but I'm scrutinizing you as well with my raised eyebrow. My pencil-thin mustache is a bit askew. I must apologize for that. But I think my hairpiece looks really extraordinary, don't you? I lay it on with a lot of adhesive so that even in a strong wind, it's not going anywhere, trust me.
That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. Now, here is Concussion.
Hey, my name is Concussion. They call me Cushion the Cushion because when you smack me with your fist, my face is so soft by years and years of pummeling that you won't feel any discomfort at all. I have a distinct lack of bones in my head at this point. It's all just soft as it. It's like guacamole. If you've ever really pulled back and slugged guacamole with your fist, it's about the same sensation. That's me. Yeah. Cushion the Cushion.
Absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I love that. I love that.
Okay, here we go.
All right. This
All right.
could be embarrassing or it could be fun, but I think it'll be interesting.
I think it could be really good. All right, here we go. So here's a guide for you. He doesn't have a name.
All right.
You come
All
up
right.
with a
So here
name.
we have an elder farmer gentleman. Well, I think I'm I'm about to go dig a hole because I need to get myself some water because I'm feeling a little dehydrated and my tummy's kind of blowing up because I ain't been drinking enough, but anything but beer, and so I'm going to go dig a hole and see if I can get myself some water and do some hydration. I do not do improv, but
well, that's good though. You make a choice. You make a choice.
you make a choice and go with it. Just roll with it.
Here's another guy, and he's got a little motion going here. So,
hey, how you doing? My name is Bill, and I just want to sell you a car. This car is absolutely fantastic. I think you're gonna like it. It has 4 wheels, and it has a shiny new interior with nice velour, and it's pink, and it might be the best thing you ever drove today.
best thing you ever drove today. Great.
Oh my goodness.
I'm gonna shift gears here. Tremendously. Let's see. Where do I find it?
Yeah, I'll blame my lighting for how red my face is right now. And if you want to actually see these drawings, guys, you're going to have to watch the YouTube video. These are great. These are great illustrations.
There's another one now. It's totally different.
Oh, wow. Okay. This one is an evil creature with a snarl. It's a fantastic drawing, by the way.
Thank you.
Let's see. Hello. My name is John, but you might know me by other names. But I don't even know what to say.
John. That's John.
His name is John. He's probably got a more... I have scarier names, but I think that's what I'll call myself. I don't know. I need to do some improv because I have no idea what to say for a character like that.
That's funny.
He looked like a demon potato.
Demon potato.
Amazing.
What about this one?
Oh wow. Okay, this is a spider monkey. How would a spider monkey sound?
Look at that shoe.
Oh wow.
Hey, I'm a spider monkey, and you can call me Michelle. And or Michael, either one. But I just found these really great heels, and as a spider monkey, they make it very hard to climb trees. But they do give me good grip occasionally, but they're not very good for climbing fast because my heels do break occasionally, and I do have they do come off rather easily because of my toe configuration.
Oh my goodness! Wow, I put myself on the spot there, but that was fun. That was fun.
Ah, yeah. Glad we could do that.
So with your impressions, I absolutely love the work you've done. The videos that I've watched, I love the ones where you've done the deep fake. Absolutely amazing, where you transition from one character to the other seamlessly, and it's just brilliant. But I've also seen videos where your face transforms. It's amazing how your face literally transforms into the characters. When you do Robin Williams, or when you do any of those, is that where when you're doing the characters, is that where it starts for you? Like, is that the trigger to get you in character, or is there a word or a phrase that you usually use to do that?
No, it's just in acting, you just make a decision to be another person, and to the degree that you can do that quickly and with facility. I mean, that's all it is. Like,
for example, just being Patrick Stewart. It all comes as a package, in other words. You just sort of decide, well, now I'm going to look at the world and use the vocabulary of Patrick Stewart. And it's a shift. Then if you want to be Robin Williams, it's totally different. You hold yourself differently. You speak at a totally different velocity. You say things that are outside the box. You use a completely different vocabulary sometimes than you would as Tommy Lee Jones, and that's a whole different attitude. It comes with a different emotion and energy level, that sort of thing.
Like Matthew McConaughey is another one. Just sort of has a whole different rhythm and the kind of things you'll talk about and think about. But that's all done with a lot of practice. You just kind of got to drill it over and over again, and then it comes to you kind of second nature, Zach.
That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. Well, now what I've loved about you as an entertainer is during the lockdown. Lockdown was kind of tough, especially for the entertainment industry, and a lot of people within the entertainment industry stopped entertaining. Now there were several, and maybe there were more than I saw. But yourself, you were producing content. You were still continuing your craft online. Jack Black, I think, was doing it. John Krasinski had the Some Good News thing that he did with doodles from his kids as the backdrop and whatever. Talk a little bit about being creative as an approach to living a satisfying life. What drives you? What motivates you to keep going and do things like that?
Well, if you start to worry about existence, it never ends. We're on a spinning sphere in space, the vastness of the universe, and it gets to be pretty depressing the more you focus on that. Like William Shatner famously recently went up into space, and he said he was just grief stricken by the fact that there was so much death, basically, and so little life in his field of view all of a sudden. And so that can be quite depressing. However, I believe, and again, this is something that I learned from my mom, is that your creative impulses, if you indulge those and really, really double down on them, you will solve a lot of problems for yourself and others, and you'll feel better, and you'll help other people to recognize that life doesn't have to be quite so serious. It isn't necessarily a grim and dismal and fated kind of existence. We can build something pleasant and meaningful, but it's done through creativity. It's done
right.
And when I say creativity, I just mean getting busy manifesting some idea you've had. And that could be on the piano. It could be with wood. It could be, with your body as a dancer, or in writing, or in building a business, or in dressing yourself, or tattooing your head. All those things are legitimate because they start with a concept that you have, and then you manifest them in the world, as opposed to receiving, consuming all the time.
Right.
Assuming that, because unfortunately there's still a lot of us who do not feel like we can create.
True.
And unfortunately, one of the hallmarks of most criminals is that they feel they cannot create and therefore must steal.
Wow.
So if you can, even in a small way, create a little something every day, it will be the beginning of something that has tremendous potential for you, even though it's like indefensible, even though you can't say, wow, I'm going to spend 10 minutes doodling and it's going to result in me receiving worldwide attention and $1 million. No, it's not going to be like that. But it is going to lead on a vector, if you will, a direction that is more positive than if you go, I'm just going to watch TV for 3 hours,
right.
Or I'm just going to hope that I get a handout, or, you know what I mean? Or always being on this intake,
right,
which is eventually gonna burn you. It's gonna, it may seem good on the short term, but as it becomes a habit, just like most habits, a habit of receipt, then you're gonna suffer from that, and people around you are gonna suffer from it.
Right. Well, and with what you're doing, I see that you're creating content always, constantly. You're creating TikToks.
In fact, actually, you and I are creating content right now.
And so you're creating TikToks, you're creating YouTube videos, you're creating a lot of stuff to keep your craft going. You can't wait for somebody else to give you that opportunity. And that's why what you did during lockdown is you were creating. You didn't say, well, I don't have a script, I don't have a camera pointed at me, I don't have somebody paying me, therefore I am going to stop being an entertainer. Similar to, as I mentioned, Jack Black and John Krasinski, they created stuff because that's who they were. They didn't just stop and say, well, my craft is over now. And so I think that living that creative life, if you're a creative person, is just express it any way, whatever way you can, and even diversify it and do it in different ways, and try a different style, a different method, a different whatever, but keep pushing yourself creatively, and don't just wait until there's a paycheck attached to it, and
100%.
and so what keeps you what keeps you going? What keeps you driving to do the things that you're doing, the content that you're doing?
Well, I like to meet new people. I have a high appetite for fun opportunities. Like I 2 weeks ago, I went and I had auditioned for a show with Billy Bob Thornton, a Taylor Sheridan show, and so I flew to Fort Worth and worked on that show with him and Demi Moore, and that was 2 weeks ago. Now I'm already like, there's nothing happening. I'm so just disappointed. So I have a high appetite for lucky breaks and things and wonderful things to come in, and also, I've got a mortgage like everybody else. I got bills to pay. I've got things I'd like to finance, so that keeps me hopping. I've been doing Colonel Sanders for quite a while for the KFC people. That's slowed down a little bit, but I did that for about 6 or 7 years. And again, that's based on an impression, because I remember very well the original Colonel Sanders, who used to do his own advertising, you see. And I remember that voice in my head pretty well. So I've been doing that, and I love things like that, and animation, and it gives you pleasure. It makes you feel like, it's a fun kind of challenge. Everybody likes something different. They feel different comfort levels and different activities. But for me, a lot of what I do just centers around the voice and creating characters that way.
Yeah. So if you were given a choice and said, okay, you can either do impressions or you can do character actors, which one would you like to do? Which one would you prefer?
That's a good question. I get asked variations of that question quite a lot, and I think I answer it a different way every time. But right now, when you say it, I think that because of the impact that impressions have on other people, in original characters, it's a little more selling that has to happen, a little more explanation that has to happen.
For instance, Robin Williams, people just love that Robin Williams thing. If I do a little TikTok or a little something for Instagram as Robin Williams, and people instantly respond, they say, oh, you gave me the feels, you brought a tear to my eye. I like having that kind of an impact on people, that I emotionally impact them. And if I have to hijack somebody else's personality for a second or two, so be it.
So do people expect you to be on all the time when you meet them? Do they, like Robin Williams and even Jim Carrey said, Jim Carrey was a character, and people expecting you constantly to be on?
I don't think so. I don't think I have that brand. Jim Carrey certainly does, and I work with Jim on The Grinch, and I discovered that he was not on all the time, and I understand that. And Robin Williams, I think, really, that was part of his brand, was that he was outside the box and an unlimited source of creative energy all the time. Some of that, I think, was medically, pharmaceutically inspired, but it became his brand, and he could deliver on it for decades. So I think probably, that's the kind of corner I don't want to paint myself into. And I'm actually as you can tell, I'm a pretty sedate person. I'm not bouncing off the walls or anything like that, or like trying to top myself or trying to dominate the conversation. I'm not that way. The thing I admire most about Robin Williams was his acting work. The films that he did where he played a real person, and had sort of a tenderness and a empathy about him, and he would embrace different kind of feelings and emotions and things and play it like a real guy.
Right.
I like that kind of better for me than even the stand-up, which is brilliant and which I can appreciate, but it's not so much my thing. I like the other part of it. So I forget the question.
Well, about being on.
I'll be on all the time. Yeah, I don't think that's part of what people just necessarily expect. I'm on, for example, this Sunday at 7 p.m. I'll be on for about an hour and a half in my Jimpression show, and I'm on when
Awesome.
I'm on my when I do a live for TikTok or Instagram. I am on, and then I'm off, and I'm doing other things.
Right. Have you ever done an impression in front of the person you're doing the impression of?
Well, I have. I've done Ron Howard, and he has been in the audience occasionally when I've done that. But I once did it to Sam Elliott because I ran into him at a recording studio, and it took me by surprise. And even though I kind of have a policy, I definitely have a sort of a operating policy of not imitating people to their face,
I found myself absolutely just trying to impress him with my great impression of Sam Elliott. And he was quite gracious about it. But, I felt just a tiny bit embarrassed by the fact that I just launched right into it like that.
So what's the newest impression that you're working on? Obviously there's new people that pop up that, become a part of our collective. We know they exist. Who's somebody new that you're doing?
Well, I was listening to Paul Povolni a lot because I enjoyed very much the Holdovers, which was I really thought he was going to win the Happy Golden Man this year for that role, but it was Cillian Murphy's time. So I took a look at Paul Povolni. He's about my age, and I think we have a similar kind of aesthetic, but he's definitely very talented guy.
Absolutely. Now, are there any impressions that you won't do or can't do?
Well, impressions that I can't do, I would say most of them. I do the ones that I do. There are an awful lot of celebrities and a lot of well-known voices. So, yeah, I mean, I'm always kind of listening. I'm an observer, a listener, and what attracts me to impressions, why I started as a kid and have continued this sort of practice, is that I have an affinity for certain sounds and certain accents and characters and emotions and things. And when I hear something that I like, I try to duplicate it. And I even go around in life, and if I hear a sound that I like, that, like I will figure out a way to replicate that for my own enjoyment. And it's a way of me having a conversation with the universe, I guess, with the little things in life. And a car goes by.
Now, are you musical? I mean, you've got such a fine-tuned ear for sounds because...
Yeah, I am fairly musical. I like to sing, and I don't... I play the ukulele a very little bit, but I never really went down that... Because I was drawing all the time, I didn't get on the piano or get on the guitar because I only have... I'm not like Vishnu. I wish I was sometimes. But I love to sing. I've done a lot of singing, and you're right. It's vibrations, it's wavelengths,
right,
and discernment. Is it like this or is it like this? All those different kind of shades, and I love that. I love that texture and that way of just being conscious and being perceptive.
Right. Well, and what you hear in your head is very different to what people are hearing when you speak, and so you've been able to transition that to where you've got that sensitivity to the nuances of a voice and an accent, which is a combination of both of those things, the voice, the accent, and then of course you nail the facial expressions that help you to get there. And I've got a two-part question. What is the process that you go through in doing an impression or starting or learning a new one or developing a new one?
Well, at this point, it's very rapid, so it's kind of hard to break down. But I basically listen. I listen a lot. I observe. The best is if you can actually see the person in person, because you get a lot more data just from that encounter. But I'm commonly given things from my agent. Can you do this voice? We're trying to replace this voice. Sometimes it's a famous person, sometimes it's not a famous person. Like I did Harry Truman's voice for George Clooney's movie, The Monuments Men. And I was not particularly familiar with Harry Truman's voice at all, as most Americans aren't. So I had to go on YouTube and kind of investigate and listen and look at him. How does he hold his jaw, his teeth? Does he open his mouth very wide? All these little factors. So I study, and then I practice. And at this point in my career, and in my experience with myself and my body and my sound, I know pretty much where my range is. I know what kind of instrument I have. And so if something comes along and it's like a tuba or a piccolo, I'm like, there's some guys that are really good tuba guys, and there's people out there that are really good piccolo guys, and I'm somewhere in the middle there. And if it's an accent, I'm like, well, that one's in my wheelhouse. I can do that. I'll add that onto that. And there's like, maybe 4 categories of things that if I listen to it, I go, okay, old British guy, received pronunciation, which is standard British, kind of whispery, middle tone, as far as the vibration. Like, yeah, okay, yeah. Now, what's his emotion? How does he present things generally? Is he very, very calm? Is he very, very studious and important?
Or is he like this more kind of, guy who's sort of a working class guy who maybe has, type 2 diabetes?
These are all evaluations that I do quite quickly and don't even sometimes verbalize them. So it can be a super fast process because I'm practiced, because I've done it a gazillion times, innumerable times.
Now, doing accents, have you ever had to do accents in front of people with the real accent?
Yes, and it's daunting, especially the Brits.
Yeah.
Because, it is absolutely down to the micro syllable. And I understand that, too, because I watch British television quite a lot. And every now and then they'll stick an American in there. And you can, it's a story about World War II. And they'll have this visiting Yank come over and interact with the detective, in Foyle's War or one of these shows, and you can tell. I watch that actor that's playing the American. I go, is he an American? And he'll say something like, "Yeah, it's great. Well, got all the trucks and the Jeeps are lined up out there outside the missile base." You go, missile base. Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
Yeah, something's not right.
Something's not right here. Yeah. So it's So it's daunting to do accents in front of the people, but I flatter myself that I've gotten away with it quite a lot because it's particularly in the British accent and Irish accents. I have worked excessively hard and studied enormously for decades now, and so I recently, I work on a show called The Big Door Prize on Apple TV Plus, and I play Chris O'Dowd's father.
Right. Wow.
And I think they thought I was Irish because I certainly didn't tip the hat.
That's a huge compliment. Yeah.
It was a huge compliment. And the last time they worked on the show, they had an Irish director. And he said at some point during the taping, he said, "It's what part of Ireland are you from?"
Nice.
And I said, "Oh, you've just given me a great compliment." I'm from, Tarzana. So.
Yeah. Well, and in England, literally you cross the road almost, and there's a different, minute difference, or sometimes even a radical difference between accents. And so nailing those is quite a skill in itself.
Yeah.
Do you do an Australian accent? Are you willing to do an Australian accent in front of an Australian?
Well, luckily or not, or for better or for worse, I've been down to Australia several times. So I've been to Sydney and I've been to Melbourne, Adelaide. I've been up to Hamilton, Ireland. I hope someday to get to Perth, even though it's bloody far away. And, there's something very attractive about the Australian accent, which I'm probably doing miserably right now or a little bit overacting. But there's the muscles involved for an American to do an Australian accent are completely different. You've got to treat your mouth in a completely different way. And I struggle with it because it's
bloody difficult. It's like saying, would you like to carry this small box upstairs, or would you like to carry this piano? It's a great difference.
It is. Well done. That was really good. And Australia does have regional as well as cultural accents.
Right.
And for me, like, my accent is so far from Australian. Like, when I go to Australia, they ask me where I'm from, and so
Well,
because
it's far, you say far and from, which starts to tip the hand. You've got a light now. It's a sort of a light Australian accent. It's been kind of weathered down by your time in the South. And then also, if you go to a place like Melbourne, for example, they sound mostly English, and they don't really sound very Australian at all. It's a tiny little bit, but like you say, it's the regionalisms and stuff, and it's wonderful. It's all richness to me. It's all like it's got the DNA of past individuals and cultures all in that thing that we carry forward. The fact that it survives in the UK as much as it does and as distinctly as it does is a marvel to me. It's like, what do you have to hypnotize these people? How does this happen?
Well, and in Australia too, because of the immigration, like, my family were first generation immigrants to Australia.
Wow.
I'm from Europe, and so I was raised on the west side of Melbourne. And so on the west side of Melbourne where all the European Australians were. And so, the European Australians had a very different type of accent than the regular Australians. Regular Australians are very nasal up in their nose. Whereas the Europeans were a little deeper, and that's where kind of mine is. And they also talk a little different. Like, they've almost got I can't even imitate it anymore. I used to be able to do a lot better. But so you've even got those regionalities within Australia. That's kind of interesting. Not as broad as England. But certainly you do. You have the more white Australian, with Anglo-Saxon roots, that are a little more refined, and you have actors within Hollywood that kind of come from that area, and then you've also just got more regular, the redneck Australian that's super, that, and then so the diversity is pretty amazing as well, and so kudos on nailing it. And so as we wrap this up, one final question that I think could really help the listeners, because you're such a master of voice. And I watched an interview with Bill Hader, and Bill Hader is another impressionist comedian, star, whatever. And his natural speaking voice is very nasal. It's like really up in his nose.
That's right, Bill Hader. Yeah, he definitely has this kind of orientation, right? But he can shift it around any way he wants. It's really interesting,
right? And so he can imitate somebody that has a deeper, more chest voice, but his default is going back to his nasal voice, which I find very interesting. But what it also tells me, and I think this is where I think people can really learn, and maybe you have some tips for this, of some of that voice control that gets it out of nasal. Like, are there any methods or tools or whatever? Because getting out of that nasal, Australian nasal, Southern nasal, whatever that nasal accent is, like, if you can bring it out of there and get it into your chest or get it into a different place, it could help you with presentations, with being on phone calls, being, how you show up on Zoom calls, on video, social media or whatever. Do you have anything that you could leave as a tip for somebody that maybe they are nasal, maybe they do have something that's either regional, it's not natural, just like Bill Hader's is not, it's just regional, or wherever he's from, or whatever he's, I guess, adopted. I don't know him. Do you have anything that you recommend for somebody to get down and to take it down? Do you have any tools in your toolbox?
Yeah, I don't have I don't have nasal phobia, or I don't think we need to be nasal shaming.
Right.
People sound the way they sound, and obviously we're given a body and a head that has a certain sound, and we can fight it or we can change it. We do whatever we want with it. It is a creative instrument. You can take a guitar and play like Django Reinhardt, or you can play like Joubert, or one of these Spanish guitarists, Segovia. It's an instrument that you can make sound in different ways, the way you attack it, the way you control it.
Right.
Control, I think, is the key factor. And what I recommend for that is, if you want to, I think most people, present company accepted, are unfamiliar with the way they sound really out in the air, and maybe even have a lot of antipathy about it. They don't like the way they sound. They don't like their voice. That's because they're very, very unfamiliar with their voice, and they haven't come to terms with it and found anything to appreciate in it. They've only had the shock of hearing it recorded and going, "Oh no, that sounds terrible. I will use my voice as infrequently as possible from here on out." and so they squelch it in a variety of ways. Sometimes people kind of got to talk like this just because they're trying to just get the words out as quickly as they can and not put any inflection or music behind it at all. The cure for it is to record yourself and listen a lot, and get over yourself. And by that, I mean not become depressed about yourself, but rather just become so familiar that you go, "Oh yeah, that's my voice."
Right.
And then you can decide, well, that's how I sound to other people. I'm not in grief about it anymore. I wonder what I could do to make it sound a little more sonorous. You know, like the people that suddenly go to Juilliard and they all come out sounding like this. This is what happened to Robin Williams. You know, they sort of decided to soften their voice and make it more acceptable, more just easily approach people, rather than just be percussive and like this, you know. Or maybe you want to sound that way. You know, maybe you want to cut through every now and then. Hey, listen up. I got something to say. You know, it depends on your purpose. But if you record yourself and get super used to what you actually sound like, then you can begin to control your voice and do whatever it is you want to do with it. I feel like we've lost touch. I seem to be the only person in the room right now. It's very sad, very lonely. I've lost the host. Maybe we ran out of time. Was there a time limit on this thing? I see there's echo cancellation. Echo cancellation. Well, it's been a wonderful time. And those of you that are still watching, I appreciate the fact that you've tuned in. I'm sorry that I had to vaporize your host, but that's the way it happens sometimes. You know, everybody's got a shelf life. If you don't have one, well, maybe you'd like to get one. Go to www.iwantashelflife.com. Well, we're 99% uploading, which is exciting, but I've lost my host. What's going on? What happened? Did you lose power?
Yeah, we absolutely lost power. We actually had tornadoes a couple of days ago, and we survived that, and massive hail and all that. But I guess it finally caught up with us. Man, that was such a good answer too that you were giving.
Well, I continued talking, so it's all recorded. Yeah, sure.
Okay, good. Well, I'm glad you kept talking because it really was a good answer. Because I agree with you that for some people they're just totally fine with it, but for somebody that says, I don't like the way I sound, what can I do about it? And I think your answer was really, really good. All right, man. Well, thank you so much for today. This was really, really good. I hope you enjoyed it.
I did very much. Thank you. Your questions were very good. My pleasure, Paul. Okay, we'll talk soon.
Take care, man. Take care. Bye-bye.